They were a young couple with their whole futures ahead of them.
She was very good in school, very smart.
He was a star basketball player.
He was her first real boyfriend.
She was on cloud nine.
But then she vanished.
She walked out of the door, and that was the last time anybody had seen her.
You start picturing your child alone, scared somewhere.
She knew that something was wrong.
Tell him, Eric.
Detectives' search for answers will reveal a shocking truth.
This wild story comes out that was never ever reported.
I know she was talking to this guy recently.
As a family, it was gut-wrenching.
We had this secretive meeting, and it ended up being the most deadly secret that you could have.
January 12th, 2018. It's a chilly Friday afternoon in Fairfax County, Virginia, a sprawling bedroom community just south of the nation's capital.
It's a pretty big county, something like 500 square miles, 1.5 million people.
It's suburbia. Lots of single-family homes, townhomes, condos, things like that. Just a place to raise families.
At the home of one Fairfax family, 16-year-old twins, Jolie and Jeanne Moussa, are just arriving home from school.
They lived with their dad, and their mom lived in Texas at the time.
Their father was out of town, and both girls were supposed to be spending the night at their friends' houses. Jolie was supposed to spend the night at her friend Leslie's house, and Janae was supposed to spend the night at her friend Sophia's house.
Before their respective sleepovers, the girls spend time preparing for their night out with friends.
Okay. What do you think of this?
It's pretty. I like it.
They were doing what teenagers do. They were talking, they were gossiping.
But to her sister, Jolie seems preoccupied.
She was distracted by her phone.
Hello? Jolie?
Sorry.
Her sister's not really sure who she's talking to, but she's answering messages.
And you said you like the star, right?
Then, after several minutes of texting back and forth, Jolie's phone suddenly rings.
Hello? All right. I'm coming.
I'll be there. What? Where are you going?
She grabs her jacket, and she has her phone, and she walks out of the door.
Jolie!
Jolie Moussa and her twin sister, Jeanne, were inseparable as kids.
Obviously, being twins, they were super close. I mean, they had their own language.
They were joined at the hip. You see one, you see the other. If you didn't see them together, it was a rare occasion.
Their bond was very strong.
Sometimes they wouldn't even speak, and you could see that they were talking to each other, and then they both laugh. And you'd be like, what's happening?
They definitely loved each other and were always there to support one another.
However, as close as the sisters were, they weren't the same. Each had her own distinct personality.
As they got older, they still hung out together, but they had different friends.
Janae and Jolie always shared the same friends for the most part growing up, but I saw how they were kind of like branching off and finding a sense of independence.
Jolie wanted what she wanted, and it had to be done that way, the right way. Jeanne was more of a laid-back twin.
Jolie's drive served her well in school.
She was a very determined child, very determined to succeed.
She had purpose, and she knew off early what she wanted to do.
She wanted to go to NYU, and she wanted to become a writer.
She wrote music, she wrote poetry, she wrote stories. She wanted to publish her book that she was writing.
She was a very creative person. Jolie loved to write her own lyrics and just sing her song.
There was nothing that Jolie couldn't do if she set her mind to.
She was going to accomplish great things.
However, by Jolie's freshman year at Mount Vernon High, there was something else vying for her attention. A 17-year-old classmate named Nebu Ibrahim.
The first time I heard Jolie mention Nebu, she mentioned him as a boy that was in one of her classes that wouldn't stop staring at her. But she thought he was really cute.
Jolie, do you know him?
No.
He played basketball. He had a lot of friends and he was very popular.
See walking over here. We'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
Hey,
Hey.
you got
Once
APU?
Nebu and Jolie started talking, she realized they had a lot in common.
He was enrolled in advanced classes, was on track to go to college, not a troublemaker or anything like that.
He was a good kid. You know, he was very respectful. He was very mannerable. He was Ethiopian. So, you know, he grew up culturally slightly different.
You got honors English next period?
Yeah.
Can I take you?
Sure.
So, like that.
Nebu was her first boyfriend. She had like, you know, crushes on guys, but, you know, before in middle school and stuff. But when Jolie first started dating Nebu, she was on cloud nine. She was always happy. Everything is butterflies and rainbows.
He provided her with a little extra attention, made her feel special.
She just really loved him and she felt she could talk to him about anything.
She was happy. Everything was great.
But now, hours before their planned sleepovers, Jolie has rushed out the door with little explanation.
Half and half.
Jolie was doing her
Doing her
hair
job.
and playing on her phone. In the middle of doing Janae's hair, Jolie said, "I'll be right back."
I'll be back, okay?
And she grabs her jacket.
Where are you going?
She gets a phone call and then she gets up and leaves the house.
Jolie didn't come back, though.
Her sister isn't initially alarmed,
There was a plan for her to go to a friend's house and spend the night. So when she doesn't come back, I think initially the thought is, hey, she probably went to a friend's house.
but Jolie's sister will soon have reason to worry.
Later on that evening, she received a text from Jolie saying, "I'm going to go to a party down in Norfolk."
Norfolk was 3 hours away.
It was near Old Dominion University.
It didn't make sense. That's not what Jolie would do.
For her to just get in the car with whomever and just go out of town.
They definitely believe that she's been taken against her will in some way, shape, or form. They do not believe in any way that she just walked away and didn't come back.
16-year-old Jolie Musa was destined to achieve big things.
Jolie wanted to become a writer. She was very focused on that.
She pretty much had her life mapped, which was very unusual for a 16-year-old.
But on the evening of January 12th, 2018, Jolie has suddenly vanished.
She was doing Janae's hair. She got a phone call and she said, "I'll be right back." And she walked out of the door.
And then there's this message that comes from her phone saying something about going to a party at Old Dominion University down in Norfolk, a long distance away. That's really out of character for her.
The sister tried to contact her again, even after that text, kind of like, what are you talking about? And no response.
Despite that, Jolie's sister Janae doesn't contact her mother in Texas or her father, who's out of town on a business trip.
Janae knew from the original plan that she was going to stay at her friend's house locally, have a sleepover.
But the next morning, after arriving home from her friends, Janae gets a disturbing call from the friend that Jolie was supposed to be with.
Hello?
Hey, Shanae, have you seen Jolie?
What do you mean? Wasn't she staying at your house?
She never showed.
The sleepover never happens.
Have you tried to call her?
Yeah, a bunch of times, but it's like her phone is off now.
Janae knew that something was wrong. Not being able to reach her by phone and not knowing where she is was alarming.
Worried about her sister, Janae contacts her uncle, who lives nearby.
Janae.
He was going to take care of them for the remainder of the time that their father was out of town.
It's Jolie. She was staying at Leslie's and she hasn't heard from her.
What?
We know she had walked out of her own free will.
The family had a Ring video, so there's video showing her leaving the house.
You can see on the camera her walking away with her phone and her jacket on, and that's it. We don't know where she was going, who she was talking to, none of those things.
And that really starts the panic buttons that morning because now they realize, okay, she's been gone for actually quite a long time and we have no idea where she is.
Once Jolie's sister fills her uncle in on what's happened, he reaches out to the twins' mother in Texas.
Hello? What do you mean she's missing?
I was scared because it was so out of character for her to just drop off the face of the earth.
Understandably, Jolie's mother couldn't help but to fear the worst at that point.
She's 16. She's beautiful. She leaves of her own free will. We don't know who she's talking to or what happened before that.
At the time, there were a lot of young Black ladies that were being taken, you know, human trafficking, sex trafficking.
People think it doesn't happen, but it does. So that's definitely a fear that something could have happened to her, that she could have left and someone could have trafficked her. I've seen it happen before, and I've interviewed mothers who've lost their kids.
Desperate to find their daughter, both of Jolie's parents rushed to try to get back to Virginia.
Her father had to get a flight from California, and I had to get a flight from Texas.
While Jolie's parents anxiously await their flights, they do what little they can to aid in finding her.
They put every effort into trying to find her, calling people.
My first thought was, let's get her face out there. I was emailing news outlets with all of her information so that people know how she looks. So if they see her, they can, report it. That was like my main concern.
Janae and her uncle also go to the Fairfax County Police Station to file a missing persons report.
The family reports her last whereabouts, how she left the house, her phone number.
We knew what she was wearing and we knew the exact time she left the house. So we wanted to make sure that we gave that information.
Not that the detective taking the report seems all that concerned.
They thought she was a runaway.
Let's give some time. She might come back on her own.
It was very frustrating, to say the least.
Look, man, you don't understand. She's just 16. She wouldn't just run away.
She came from a very solid family. She had a good life, a really good life.
I'm gonna call her mother. She'll tell you the exact same thing I just did.
When police reach Jolie's mother, who's still waiting at home for her flight, she's adamant that her daughter is in danger.
A runaway?
The police were telling me that she was a runaway, and I couldn't shake that my child would have not done this. There's no reason to leave.
My daughter?
No way. She was happy.
Run from what?
Or was it possible Jolie's mother was asking the wrong question?
Okay.
Rather than what Jolie was running from, maybe it was more of a question of who she was running with.
Is she dating anyone?
Everybody looks to the boyfriend. That's the first thing that you do.
Jolie's mom tells police that her daughter had been dating a classmate named Nebiu Ibrahim. But not anymore.
She broke up with him.
And the reason for the breakup added new urgency to the investigation.
I told him that Nebiu put his hands on my child.
Stop, Nebiu!
Police in Fairfax County, Virginia, have just learned that missing teen Jolie Musa recently broke up with her boyfriend, Nebiu Ibrahim.
I told police about Nebiu when we were filing the report.
Jolie broke up with her boyfriend a few months ago, and it was bad.
According to Jolie's mother, her daughter broke up with Nebiu in September, not long after the start of her sophomore year. And shortly after the breakup, the two had a heated encounter.
At that time, Jolie and Nebiu were going to the same school. On her way home, she encountered Nebiu, who was waiting for her.
Hey, we need to talk.
I don't want to.
He wouldn't take no for an answer.
Not till you talk to me.
Stop, Nebiu.
He confronted her, and during the course of the argument, he got physical.
She ends up on the ground, lying on her back.
Nebiu jumped on her and started to hit her.
You playing with me?
Stop, Nebiu.
He ended up slapping her in the face.
Jolie's screams attracted the attention of a man nearby.
Hey,
You leaving me?
keep your hands off her.
Nebiu left. Police were called and talked to Jolie about what had happened.
911 emergency.
Hey, I think I just witnessed an assault.
I heard about it first from her father that same day. And when he told me, I felt extremely angry. I am very much a mother bear. So I was upset. I wanted to get on a plane and go at that moment.
The family pressed charges, leading to Nebu's arrest for assault.
He goes to the juvenile court and he pled guilty to the assault, and he was sentenced to perform 20 hours of community service, to undergo a mental health evaluation and follow any recommended treatment, and that he needed to complete an anger management program.
He's given a chance of having everything off his record if he's of good behavior for a year and has no contact with Jolie. And that was important to the family, no contact.
Because we had a stay away order, that would mean that he would have to leave their school.
He was sent to another alternative school in Fairfax.
Do you think they're staying away from each other?
Knowing that she was a teenager, he's a teenager, they might have been sneaking out to see each other.
Jolie's mother is adamant that isn't the case.
I had just asked her and she was like, no, no, no. There was no contact of any kind.
And now that she's missing, I don't know anymore.
Based on what they've learned from Jolie's mother, detectives pay a visit to the missing teen's ex-boyfriend.
Due to their past history, police went to talk to him.
It's literally just, hey, let's go talk to the boyfriend and see if he's seen her, see if he has any information that might help us figure out where she is.
However, Nebu has little information for the detectives.
You been in contact with Miss Jolie?
No, sir.
He's saying that he hasn't talked to her in quite some time, that he had gotten in trouble and he had been told to stay away from her and he hasn't seen her. He hasn't talked to her.
You have any idea where she is?
I have no idea.
He never really wavered.
Unwilling to take Nebu at his word, given his history with Jolie, detectives ask if they can search his cell phone.
But there was no indication that he had been in contact with her, not on the afternoon she disappeared or any time before that.
Detectives and a CSI tech also perform a quick search of his residence.
And that was a dead end. There was nothing that came from that.
Nebu an apparent dead end. The next morning, detectives circle back to Jolie's parents, who are now both in Virginia.
Is there anyone else you think we look into?
I can't think of anybody.
Jolie didn't have enemies.
But Jolie's sister, Janae, does say that there is someone else the detectives should talk to.
I know she was talking to this guy recently.
Do you have a name on it?
I only know his first name.
Her sister said, oh, I remember just being around her and, she would be texting and the person was named Gio.
Have you ever met him before?
No,
What else did she tell you about him?
not much. I didn't want to be nosy.
They were really close, but they had to give each other a little bit of space.
But now detectives wonder, could the mysterious Gio be the key to finding Jolie?
If the last relationship she's in is this Geo person, that was something that had to be followed up on.
We were trying to find out who this individual was.
Maybe she went with him to Old Dominion University for this party.
48 hours after Jolie Musa disappeared, detectives searching for the missing teen have a new lead.
I know she was talking to this guy recently. I only know his first name.
Her family and friends bring up the name Gio.
According to her sister, Gio was a boy Jolie had been trading texts with recently.
This person has contact with Jolie, so we need to get in touch with this individual to find out if he knows anything.
Hoping to learn more, detectives subpoena Jolie's phone records.
Did she have a contact named Gio? Who does she talk to all the time?
Then, while waiting for Jolie's cell provider to respond, detectives reach out to the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
They're chasing every possibility. Any, criminal activity that's happened recently where someone's been abducted, in investigating a missing juvenile.
And then trying to use that information to find her alive. I mean, that's the hope.
With each passing day, Fairfax police become increasingly concerned for Jolie's safety.
There were some pretty big red flags. From the day that she goes missing, her social media pages go dormant, which is very, very odd for any teenage girl.
She hasn't instituted any communication back to her family. She hasn't voluntarily come home.
Still, Jolie's family remains steadfast in their commitment to find her.
We were canvassing areas with flyers and just going out and talking to people throughout the area.
We were just going crazy, basically, trying to figure out where she could possibly be.
I had no intentions on stopping it. I was hoping against hope until I hear otherwise.
And when detectives receive Jolie's phone records a few days later, they finally have what appears to be a solid clue.
One of the last phone calls, it's an unknown number.
When detectives look up the number, they learn that it belongs to a 13-year-old boy named Eric Brand. Later that afternoon, detectives contact Eric's parents and ask them to bring him in for an interview.
We want to talk to you about the phone call you made to this girl. Because shortly thereafter, she went missing.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
He was terrified. He was terrified.
I don't even know who this girl is.
How do you explain her number in your phone?
Eric says that on the Friday afternoon before Jolie disappeared, he'd been hanging out in a nearby park.
He said an older boy approached him and asked him for a favor.
All I did was let this guy borrow my phone.
He had seen him before, so he was okay lending him his phone.
Do you know his name?
No.
What do he look like?
Strong guy. Scary looking.
The description doesn't match Nebu. But could it be Gio?
The detectives didn't even know what this Gio guy looked like.
Whoever he was, Eric is able to confirm that the older boy did meet up with a girl.
Did you see the girl?
Yeah, I saw her.
What did she look like?
Pretty, light-skinned, older than me.
He described what she was wearing, and that matched the description of what Jolie was wearing when she left the house.
His story gives detectives what appears to be a solid lead.
Whoever this older kid was, he seemed to have been the last person with Jolie before her disappearance.
Is he the mysterious Gio, or could he be someone else?
The General Investigation Section did some extensive interviews of anybody that they could track down, meaning friends and family members, trying to get as much information as possible.
But detectives soon hit a wall.
The more we look into Gio, the more it just seems like there is no Gio. We can't find anything that would indicate that this Gio is a real person.
However, while talking to Jolie's friends, detectives do find a young woman named Elena Merritt. And what she tells them will turn the case upside down.
This wild story comes out that was never ever reported to the police.
According to Elena, Nebu and Jolie had never really stopped communicating.
Nebu has been in contact with her through social media, through third parties.
Jolie had even told Elena that Nebu blamed her for his transfer to the alternative school.
To him, it was a big deal. It was a very big deal.
He's really angry about not being able to hang out with his friends and play basketball.
So in early December, according to Elena, Jolie agreed to meet with Nebu to try to talk things out.
I think she wanted to break it with him and have kind of a clean break.
But things hadn't gone as Jolie planned.
Elena tells detectives that later that evening, Jolie had shown up at her house, covered in bruises.
They had argued about their relationship. He got very angry.
She describes him just putting his hands around her neck and squeezing.
She thought she was going to die.
She had told him to stop, but he wouldn't stop, and she passed out.
By the time Jolie came to, Nebu was gone.
We just realized that at this point, she's most likely deceased, and he's probably at fault for it.
But where's the proof? The answer comes a few days later when Eric Brand returns to the police station.
Tell him, Eric.
I wasn't totally honest with you the first time we talked.
It was a bombshell.
Everything starts to come out.
And that's when our suspicion came to reality.
I didn't want to believe that that type of evil existed.
Detectives investigating the disappearance of 16-year-old Jolie Musa have just uncovered potentially damning information about her ex-boyfriend, Nebu Ibrahim.
We had evidence at that point in time that he had strangled her a month prior.
And now the 13-year-old who had seen Jolie on the evening of her disappearance has just come forward with another shocking revelation.
He admitted that the initial description of the person who he saw with Jolie was incorrect.
I'm sorry I lied, but the guy said he'd pay me.
He communicated to that witness, hey, if the police ask, don't tell them you saw me.
The witness's new description leaves detectives with little doubt about their suspect's identity.
The description that the young man gave matched Nebu.
And then we had him being seen with a girl that matched Jolie's description on the day that she disappeared.
That put Jolie and Nebu together after he had told the police that he hadn't seen her for days and hadn't talked to her for days.
Yes, sir.
So that witness is basically showing that Nebu is a liar.
Detectives suspect he may also be a killer.
He had choked her before and made her pass out.
However, they didn't have any evidence that Nebu killed Jolie this time,
We don't have a body.
but they did have an idea of where to find one.
On January 26th, Fairfax County authorities descend on the park where Jolie met up with Nebu.
The next logical step is to actually do a physical grid walk of this park.
Hey, guys.
Just off one of the trails, an officer spots what appears to be a boot protruding from a pile of leaves.
They had a body that was partially covered with leaves and debris.
Jolie Musa is no longer missing. While the coroner's team removes Jolie's body for autopsy, detectives face the grim task of informing the family that Jolie is dead.
It was horrible for them.
When Detective Byerson told us that Jolie's body was found and it was her, I remember hearing the news, and then I just remember being in a lot of physical pain. I never understood the term heartbroken, but you physically feel like your heart is broken.
We didn't want to find her like this, but we found her. And now we have to figure out, what do we do from this point on?
When detectives receive the autopsy report the following day, the findings reveal exactly how Jolie had died.
They found the hemorrhages in the brain that you would find from strangulation.
The autopsy is more than enough to convince detectives that Nebu is Jolie's killer.
Knowing that he had done that before obviously was a factor in our believing that he was the person responsible.
Detectives suspected that this mysterious Geo was simply Jolie's cover name for Nebu.
However, while detectives are certain they found Jolie's killer, will it be enough to convince a jury?
The hardest thing you have to do is tell a family that you're not sure that you will ever be able to bring their daughter's murderer to justice. And that's where we were at that time. If we were to go to trial on what we have now, we would probably lose.
We needed more evidence if we were going to prosecute him.
However, the investigators have a strategy to overcome that.
They decided to charge Nebu for assault for the earlier strangling incident, the one where Jolie passed out.
If he's convicted of strangulation, that, along with the prior assault in September, could be used as pieces of evidence in a subsequent murder conviction. And so it was very important that we had this strangulation conviction.
And then shift our focus to a murder charge and, really seek justice for Jolie.
Investigators feel confident they have the evidence to convict Nebiu for the December assault.
We're actually able to track down some social media messages that he made to a friend of his admitting to that strangulation, and even more disturbing, admitting that he believed that he had killed her.
Once the prosecutors explain their plan, the family agrees to go along.
We both had the same objective, literally the same objective. I want him to be convicted and to the full extent of the law. And they were like, okay, well, that's what we want too.
This family was so gracious and so helpful in every step of the way. I can't speak highly enough about them. It was so humbling, the trust they gave us.
On January 30th, 2018, detectives placed Nebiu under arrest for the December assault.
Detectives also took a sample of his DNA.
By being able to lock him up, provided us additional time for some of the lab results and stuff to come back.
We offered a plea to the defense in that case on the strangulation case. He agreed to do that.
He pled guilty on the strangulation. He was deferential to the judge. He put on the remorseful act. Yes, sir. No, sir. I'm sorry. I've learned my lesson.
But when detectives receive the DNA results, it's clear that Nebiu has a harder lesson coming.
We got DNA evidence that put Nebiu's DNA around Jolie's neck.
He's going to have to explain that in some way, shape, or form.
At the end of August 2018, when Nebiu is released from jail on the assault charge, the detectives are waiting.
As he leaves the jail complex, I inform Nebiu that he's under arrest for the murder of Jolie Musa.
They took him to the police headquarters, had him sit down.
We knew we were on our way to getting justice for this murder.
Our case is solid against you.
They advised him of his Miranda rights, made it clear, you don't have to talk to me. And Nebiu immediately was like, okay, I want to talk to you.
All right. So let me tell you what really happened.
Of 16-year-old Jolie Musa, her ex-boyfriend Nebiu Ibrahim says he's willing to tell detectives what happened.
All right, I'm gonna tell you what happened.
For a homicide detective, that's gold. You want to have that confession.
Nebiu begins by admitting that he had been in contact with Jolie on the Friday that she disappeared.
He goes to this park area. He approaches someone that he knows from around the neighborhood, and he uses that person's phone to call Jolie and to contact Jolie to get her to come out to meet him.
What did you expect to happen?
Really wasn't sure, but I knew it was gonna get bad.
Filter that through the context of having previously choked her to the point of passing out. So I believe to this day that he embarked on this mission to kill her, that he knew exactly how bad it would get, as evidenced by the fact that he leaves his phone at home.
Whether he intended to kill Jolie or not, Nebiu admits that when they met up in the park, things did become heated.
The argument itself got, by his own description, very loud. He blames her for his life getting turned upside down. He's extremely angry about this.
You ruined my life. I can't go out with my friends. I can't play basketball.
He blamed her for the things in his life not going as he planned them.
His anger just built in him for months on end, and he refused to take responsibility for his own actions.
Whose fault is that?
Yours.
It's just shocking to me that he had no self-awareness, that he just chose to kind of go down the path of blaming others for his woes.
He was mad that she was just going to walk away from him and continue her life.
Because they were no longer at the same school, I think he had a lot of suspicion that she was seeing other guys at Mount Vernon.
He was a very jealous individual, very controlling. I think control was important to him.
And plus, I know you out here being a...
I'm not seeing anybody. We're done.
Nebiu says that when Jolie stormed off, His anger boiled over.
That puts him into a rage. He gets so angry, puts her in MMA-style chokehold. He gives us a rough time estimate of maybe a minute or two that he holds this.
He had every opportunity to stop.
But Nebu kept going.
He lays her down on her back on the trail, that he straddles her. So he's literally sitting on top of her. And then he shows us how he takes both of his hands and puts them around her neck and squeezes and continues to strangle her.
He's over her at one point, looking down at her face as he's doing this. Strangulation is a very intimate form of murder.
Did you ever consider stopping?
Yeah. But I kept going anyway.
He describes this with no emotion, no remorse. He proceeds to end her life and literally take her last breath from her.
And if this can't get any more horrible, he then describes a third strangulation where he picks up her lifeless body, scoots behind her, and puts her back in that original MMA type chokehold for an even longer time.
After that, I knew I had to get rid of the body.
He describes picking up her lifeless body to move her off the trail.
He covered her with leaves so that she wouldn't be discovered.
You sent the text to her sister?
Yeah.
He sent the text because he wanted to buy himself time. Then he tossed Jolie's phone in a pond that was nearby his house.
Once his confession is over, prosecutors charge Nebu with first-degree murder.
First-degree murder is premeditated murder. And his statement lent itself to first-degree murder. He said he knew he could stop, and he didn't. And he said he was going to end it.
If that's not premeditation, I don't know what the definition of it is.
Once Nebu's booked back into the Fairfax County Jail, detectives inform Jolie's family that her killer has been caught.
When I got the phone call stating that he had confessed, I remember crying, just like profusely. I mean, like, I think I may have even hollered a little bit. There was like a weight that lifted up off my shoulders.
While Jolie's family breathes a sigh of relief, the walls close in around Nebu.
In Virginia, at the time, if you were over 14 years of age and were charged with murder, you were going to be tried as an adult. We just had a rock-solid case on the murder.
He wanted to plead guilty. And we said, okay, understanding there is no agreement as to sentence. You're basically throwing yourself upon the mercy of the court.
I think he thought by pleading guilty, he might get some favorable reduction in his sentence.
At his sentencing on September 4th, 2019, Nebu does everything he can to sway the judge's decision.
He was crying and, I'm sorry to the family, and this is why I'm pleading guilty.
But when it's her turn to speak, Jolie's mother is having none of it.
I said, don't let him fool you like he fooled me. He is a sociopath and he is a murderer, and he took my child's life for no reason.
And a mother's word makes the difference.
Ultimately, the judge did sentence him to life in prison.
I am extremely happy that he got the maximum.
But no sentence will ever make up for the loss Jolie's family endures.
We don't get to see her grow up where her life could have led her. Like, those things were taken from us.
There's nothing about her that I don't miss.
Jolie was a lovely person with an absolutely beautiful soul and a big heart. And Jolie is still with me. I carry her with me.
He was rebuilding his future in the wake of tragedy.
Katrina brought all this out here. He had his own life that he was restarting over in Texas.
He also found his voice along the way.
He started rapping about his trials and, things he's been through.
He was trying to pursue that as maybe a career.
A new love seemed to be a signal that the tides had finally turned.
They got to know each other really well.
He was happy. I always wanted to bring her around.
Until rough waters threatened to upend his life again.
This was a very unique and different storm. It was powerful, and it kept on going inland.
It was crazy. He just like went silent.
Was this another missing person lost in Hurricane Harvey?
The evidence would reveal something far more ominous.
When I seen the news, I got sick to my stomach, physically ill.
What better way to make someone disappear than in the midst of a hurricane?
Oh.
August 18th, 2017. It's Friday evening in Baytown, Texas, a blue-collar town on the Houston Shipping Channel.
It's a large port area where you're going to have a lot of cargo and shipping, the various refineries or the various plastic companies.
That's pretty much in the lifeblood of the town for many years.
As people are getting off of work from Baytown's refineries and chemical plants, they keep a watchful eye on the news.
Hurricane Harvey was making its way across the Caribbean at that point and threatening to turn towards Texas.
And the storm is pretty much the number one thing on people's minds because they've seen what storms can do here.
This was 9 years just after Hurricane Ike that cost billions in damage and killed dozens. So it was pretty understandable why people were nervous.
However, even with the threat of a hurricane, one Baytown woman has a more urgent matter. A little after 6 p.m., 30-year-old Sierra Sutton arrives at the Baytown police station to report that her boyfriend, 32-year-old Stephen Coleman, has been missing since Wednesday.
It was a little past 7 p.m. when he left, and he was only supposed to be gone for a little while.
She said he just got up and walked out the door. And she said that was the last time she saw her.
He was supposed to meet his daughter that night.
Have you talked to her, the daughter?
Called her mother, but they haven't seen her.
Sierra said she also called several of Stephen's friends who hadn't heard from him either.
Sierra claims that it's unlike Stephen to not be in touch with his friends and family.
I knew something wasn't right with Stephen when I didn't hear from him because we would talk all the time.
If he home, he gonna call me. Something just didn't add up.
Get it? I understand.
Louisiana native Stephen Coleman had come to Texas in 2005, blown there by a different storm.
When Hurricane Katrina hit the New Orleans area, it was devastating. And Stephen, he was one of over 200,000 people who fled Louisiana and then settled in Houston, Texas.
Most of the people fleeing Katrina landed in the Houston area with little money and spent years struggling to rebuild their lives.
Stephen was no exception.
He needed to make some money. He needed a couple of dollars in his pocket because he was trying to get somewhere to stay.
He was looking for a job.
The problem was he had a few strikes against him.
Stephen had grown up in one of the toughest areas in New Orleans and had gotten into some trouble.
He went to jail for like just being in the streets.
He had a few minor offenses on his record, like misdemeanor drug possession and carrying a handgun without a license.
But Stephen refused to let his past define him.
He had a great heart, great sense of humor. He was just a good person.
Here's a guy who maybe had a little bit of a past. He's trying to turn it around, trying to look for a better future like we all do.
After months of struggling, Stephen managed to find a place for himself in Baytown, a bustling suburb of Houston.
Baytown is right on the coast of Galveston Bay. It's about half an hour from downtown Houston, and it's got big business in oil refining and steel manufacturing.
He worked at a chemical plant, and he was a hard worker.
The more he got into it, the better he got. Like he was seeing his capabilities. So he went from the rookie to the supervisor.
However, for all Stephen's dedication and success at his job, music was his true passion.
And this one right here, epic. He had made this rap CD and was trying to pursue that as maybe a career.
Steven loved his music. He was really good at his craft.
His music was like a way to express a lot of stuff that we was going through.
Got 100 hustles. Let me show you how I can hit the block broke and get $1 million right now. Right? Got 100 hustles.
It was so realistic. It was raw. He was gifted. Like people would tell him, man, hey man, this song, man, I listened to this song, bro. And you know, it had me feeling like this. It made me believe and gave me hope.
Raw, real, and full of hope, Steven was a rising star in both the Houston rap scene and back home in New Orleans.
He had a lot of fans from Facebook and stuff like that.
One of those fans was Sierra Sutton.
We're playing on Facebook one day. He got a friend request. So the friend request was Sierra.
At the time, Sierra lived in New Orleans.
Steven and Sierra knew each other. They knew each other from Louisiana. But the relationship really grew when they connected on social media.
So he ended up going down there. They do their thing. She left it, and she came here.
Sierra didn't come to Baytown alone, however. She also brought her 10-year-old daughter.
Yeah. She had a daughter. And he had a daughter.
Steven's daughter was about the same age as Sierra's, but he had a complicated relationship with the little girl's mother. So he went out of his way to be there for Sierra's daughter.
Once in Baytown, Sierra and Steven started building their life together.
She went the extra mile for him, help him, support him, you know, kind of take some of the pressure off him.
And with Sierra by his side, Steven could focus on taking his musical career to the next level.
He wanted to get his music out more. He wanted to do a bunch of shows. He wanted to try to sign to a label.
But this rising star has now faded from view. In mid-August of 2017, Sierra Sutton claims Steven has been missing for the last 2 days.
He was only supposed to be gone for a little while.
And with an impending disaster approaching off the coast of Baytown, his girlfriend believes something worse may have already happened to Steven.
I'm afraid it's because of some of the things that he used to be into.
What do you mean by that? What kind of things?
Some of the people he used to run with, they were trouble.
In the summer of 2017, with his #1 fan Sierra Sutton at his side, and his rap career on the rise, it looked as if there were no limits for Steven Coleman.
He was always in a good space. Every day he woke up with something on his mind. Every day he's setting goals, different plans.
He was really good at what he did. But he also worked as well. So he was rapping and working. If it wasn't at work, he was at the studio.
But now, Sierra has just gone to the police and reported that she hasn't seen or heard from Steven in 48 hours.
She goes to the cops and says she's missing. They take her statements and get all the information from her.
According to Sierra, with Hurricane Harvey fast approaching, Steven had left their apartment on Wednesday night to check on his daughter from a previous relationship.
She lives with her mama.
Do you know the mother's name?
Kimberly Wiley.
Him and his baby mom, they started talking to each other and they had got back cool and, you know, he started going over.
Kimberly and Steven's daughter had moved to the Houston area as well after Katrina. So this was perfect for Steven to be able to see his daughter on a regular basis.
He was trying to be there and help with the daughter.
But that Wednesday night, Steven never showed up to see his daughter.
How you know that?
Because I asked her.
Kimberly, correct?
Yeah, I called her when I couldn't get a hold of Steven.
Exes are often considered persons of interest, so detectives were suspicious of Kimberly.
However, Sierra offers up a different possibility.
In the missing person report that Sierra filed, she volunteers some theories that Steven went back to his old ways and he was back amongst a rough crowd.
Some of the people he used to run around with, they were trouble.
Is he doing anything illegal now?
Not that I know of.
With Sierra offering little in the way of names, detectives can hardly start to investigate anyone specific. But Sierra does reveal one clue that indicates something nefarious may have happened to Stephen.
What makes you think that?
Both his cars are still in the parking lot.
He was a car person. He had 2 cars. He had just gotten a new Jaguar. He loved that car.
That right there raised red flags. Why would he just walk off somewhere without even taking his vehicle?
He just loved his car. He did not want to leave his car behind. This dude don't even want to ride with me in my car to go to the corner store.
I'm just really worried about him.
I get it. Understand. We'll do everything we can, ma'am.
Once they finish filling out the missing persons report, detectives issue a be on the lookout for Stephen.
We cannot just put everything on hold just because there's a hurricane coming.
They also do a background check on Stephen, but find nothing to indicate he was associating with criminals, nor that he was a hardened criminal.
There were a few minor charges in his past, but there was nothing recent.
He was not somebody who looked for trouble. He did not seem like a bad guy at all.
With his background an apparent dead end, detectives subpoena his cell phone and financial records.
They started to check his bank accounts and they started to kind of backtrack.
Any activity on Stephen's debit and credit cards would have left a trail that detectives could trace.
While waiting to hear back from Stephen's bank and cell phone provider, detectives pay a visit to the apartment complex he and Sierra call home.
The initial canvas showed his cars are there.
Detectives didn't find any trace of blood or anything around the cars to indicate foul play.
Canvassing the apartment complex also fails to produce any leads.
They had a recent picture of Stephen with a missing persons flyer. Nobody really ever heard of any kind of disturbances or fights that they shared with the detectives and the police officers. So it didn't look like anything really significant would have gone on in the apartment complex.
The detective's next move is questioning Kimberly Wiley, Stephen's ex and mother to his 8-year-old daughter.
Sierra told detectives that she had talked to Kimberly, and neither she nor her daughter had heard from Stephen.
When detectives meet with Kimberly at the Baytown Police Department, her story seems to line up with Sierra's.
Kimberly, when was the last time you spoke to Stephen?
Monday afternoon.
But you were supposed to see him on Wednesday. Is that right?
That was the plan. He was supposed to come by to see our daughter.
Kimberly told them the same thing Sierra did, that Stephen was supposed to come see his daughter on Wednesday night.
However, Kimberly claims that once Wednesday rolled around, she never heard from Stephen, so she made other plans.
What were you doing? I was with a friend.
To detectives, Kimberly's answers seem evasive. Could she be denying seeing Stephen on Wednesday because something more sinister had happened?
Thank you for coming in.
Her story was a little unconvincing, but detectives weren't even sure if anything had happened to Stephen at this point.
They really needed his phone records to give them some sort of lead.
Later that afternoon, detectives receive Stephen's phone records, and it appears Kimberly is telling the truth. Stephen hadn't even called her on Wednesday. However, there is one final outgoing call on Stephen's records that could give them a new suspect.
Who was the last person that we know Stephen spoke to? A woman named Rose.
Rose Lawrence?
Yes.
When I last talked to Stephen, we were talking about getting together, going out, and having fun like we always do. So when I found out Stephen was missing, it was crazy. I tried to contact him. I tried to FaceTime him. I tried to messenger him. No answer. He just went silent. I started feeling like, what's going on? Where's Steven?
While clouds from Hurricane Harvey roll in over the Texas coast, detectives investigating the disappearance of Stephen Coleman have just gotten their first lead in the case.
According to Steven's phone records, the last person that he spoke to before he disappeared was a woman named Rose Lawrence.
With the window of opportunity to find Stephen Coleman narrowing, interviewing the last person who had contact with him could be the break detectives need.
Rose Lawrence?
Yes?
We understand you're friends with Stephen Coleman.
Yeah. Why?
I need to ask you a few questions about him.
She readily admits she knows Stephen very well. They were very close.
When you say close, what exactly do you mean?
That kind of statement usually makes detectives wonder, is it just a friendly relationship or could they be looking at a love triangle?
We're just friends. I've known Stephen for years. He'd come by from time to time and we'd hang out, talk, you know?
Rose explains that on the Wednesday Stephen disappeared, he was supposed to stop by on his way to see his daughter, but he never arrived.
He didn't show?
No.
Rose said she wasn't worried about it because between his job, his music, his girlfriend, and his daughter, Stephen was very busy. She just thought something had come up.
It did seem strange. When I called him the next day, he never answered or returned my call.
She never heard from him. That was the last conversation she ever had with him.
When you hear from Stephen, let him know we're trying to find him.
I will. I just hope he's okay.
Detectives aren't sure if Rose is telling them the whole story. So now the question becomes, did Sierra Sutton know about Rose and Stephen's friendship?
Stephen's girlfriend, Sierra, hadn't said anything to detectives about him going over to Rose's on the night he disappeared.
Stephen might have been keeping Rose a secret because there was something more going on between them.
Detectives sense the potential for a love triangle turned vengeful. But which woman had been scorned? Sierra Sutton or Rose Lawrence? And is Stephen Coleman still alive? On Sunday, 2 days after Sierra reported Stephen missing, detectives reach out to his family in hopes of learning more.
They make a phone call back to Louisiana to Stephen's mom.
She was very upset to hear about Stephen being reported missing.
They told her Sierra had filed the report on Friday.
Unfortunately, Stephen's mother has little insight on her son's relationship with Sierra.
She said she didn't know all that much about Stephen's life in Baytown.
However, she does reveal that she too has had trouble reaching him over the past several days.
Stephen's mom told detectives that she last heard from Stephen 5 days ago.
Now it's not only his girlfriend who hasn't had contact with him, it's his mother too.
When detectives get in touch with several of Stephen's Houston area friends, they share the same fears.
Something just didn't add up. He might go missing maybe a day or two. That was known. Or you talk to him a day, you probably don't talk to him maybe if not the next day, the following.
Asked if Stephen has any enemies, his friends claim the answer is unequivocally no.
People would look up to him. He was a very giving person and didn't mind helping others.
He's definitely a guy that you will want in your life. He'll uplift you and he'll never let you down.
However, Stephen's friends also admit that he wasn't perfect, and they reveal some details about him that lend credence to detectives' earlier suspicions.
He did have a penchant for having a lot of women.
Stephen's friends told police that he was never really satisfied with having just one girlfriend.
According to his friends, Stephen's refusal to stay monogamous eventually led to issues with Sierra.
Apparently, Sierra has suspected him of sleeping around.
She definitely got jealous.
According to Stephen's friends, not only was Stephen seeing other women, He talked about ending his relationship with Sierra.
He just didn't feel that he wanted to be with her anymore. And so he was going to break up with her.
However, while Stephen had no intention of settling down, he wasn't about to put Sierra on the street.
It was a difficult situation for him to try to get Sierra out because, number one, she had a daughter.
And she didn't have nowhere to go. She had nobody there.
Does the impending breakup suggest that Sierra had something to do with Stephen's disappearance?
It's certainly a good motive to make somebody disappear.
Or was there some other explanation for why no one's heard from Stephen Coleman?
In an investigation, if you leave one stone unturned, well, that's going to be the stone that you should have looked at.
And on August 22nd, detectives will get their answer.
4 days after Stephen disappeared, some workers at the county landfill were burying the day's haul when something unusual happened.
It's a landfill. Heaps and mounds of garbage. The smell, the stench in the air.
But it's not just the stench of garbage that's in the air.
Oh! What is it that they see? The torso of a human body.
On August 22nd, 4 days after Stephen Coleman's girlfriend, Sierra Sutton, reported him missing, workers at a landfill just outside of Baytown, Texas, have just made a gruesome discovery.
As they were pushing dirt over the garbage, they saw what appeared to be a dismembered body.
The only thing they found was the torso. They didn't find nothing else.
Oh, y'all do. Hey, call 911.
When detectives investigating Stephen Coleman's disappearance receive information that a black male has been found, they immediately make their way to the scene. But there is nothing to help identify the body on site.
It's just a portion of a body. There's no head. There's no way to identify really who it is.
It was also not really clear to detectives how the man died.
Detectives are looking at this decomposing torso. It's been dismembered. It's been mutilated.
Have the remains of Stephen Coleman been found?
But there is a science to landfills.
As the coroner's crew removes the torso for autopsy and identity testing, detectives wait for confirmation before informing Stephen's family in New Orleans.
For a family that is already concerned about a loved one being missing, to have to go inform a family that their loved one is dead, that is emotional enough. But then to have to, on top of that, say, here's the condition we found your loved one in, to have to go tell the family that is just horrific.
But when the gruesome discovery makes the local news, family and friends of Stephen Coleman fear the worst.
When I seen the news, I got sick to my stomach. Physically ill. I could not believe what I just saw on TV. It was just crazy. And everyone that knows him pretty much felt the same thing.
I was hoping that what they found wasn't him. You know, I was hoping that he was just hiding somewhere, ducked off somebody, doing his thing.
With the strong belief they've located the body of Stephen Coleman, detectives believe their next step is to follow up with the girlfriend who reported him missing, Sierra Sutton.
They contact Sierra, say they have a huge development in the case of Stephen, and they need to discuss some very important things with her. And they ask her to come down and talk. And she says, yep, I'll come down.
But now Sierra is the one who's disappeared, and the timing seems a little too perfect. On August 23rd, with Hurricane Harvey's impending landfall, the governor declares a state of emergency, sending South Texas into a frenzy.
Could Sierra be fleeing the storm? The detectives just weren't sure.
She's off the grid. The detectives, they can't get a hold of Sierra.
However, even as detectives are trying to find Sierra, they finally hear back from Stephen's bank and find a promising lead.
His credit cards were used at a local store here in Baytown.
There was a $48 charge at around 8 on Thursday morning, which would have been after he disappeared.
This card should be with him. And now it's being used during the same time that he is missing.
When detectives contact the store, management agrees to send them a list of everything that was purchased: a mattress pad, rope, and duct tape.
The receipt listed items that detectives say look like things to dispose of his body.
Later that afternoon, detectives also received the surveillance video of the transaction.
They were looking for it. Who's on the video? Who was there using Stephen's card?
It makes no sense for him just to walk off and all of a sudden just go buy a bunch of items like duct tape and rope. What use would he have for any of that?
As the detectives suspected, it wasn't Stephen.
They're clearly able to see a woman making a purchase.
For what it appears, it looks like Sierra.
Detectives investigating the death of aspiring rapper Stephen Coleman have just found store security video that appears to implicate his girlfriend, Sierra Sutton.
The video shows Sierra using Stephen's credit card and buying items that detectives say look like things to dispose of his body.
There was receipts on this as well. And this is after, of course, he disappeared.
Detectives have been trying to get in touch with Sierra, but with Hurricane Harvey approaching rapidly, they have been unable to reach her.
It's been all over the news that police believe they found Stephen's dismembered remains in a local landfill.
There was also this possibility that Sierra had left town, at least temporarily, until things calmed down. There were a lot of people who saw shelter elsewhere.
With Sierra in the wind, detectives get a warrant to search the apartment she shared with Stephen.
The store video and the remains from the landfill were enough to give them probable cause.
They have a torso. There's got to be some kind of evidence somewhere.
Sierra Sutton, Baytown Police. Baytown Police.
They got that search warrant. And they execute the search warrant. Although they couldn't find Sierra.
You're not going to find her.
What do you mean?
She moved.
After they find this torso in the landfill, they go back to her place, and of course they find out she's not there. She's left.
She moved?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 days ago.
Detectives contact the complex manager, who lets them in the apartment.
Thank you.
Inside the apartment was essentially empty.
Definitely looks like she moved out.
She didn't have no money, so she went to selling the furniture to help her get some money to get back to New Orleans. She got some guys to help her.
You smell that?
There's a nice, fresh smell. To the naked eye, it seems like it's a clean apartment.
Let's get CSI in here. Can we get a luminol test here?
The detectives bring their crime scene unit in, and they use something what's called luminol.
When you spray luminol on a surface, it reacts to organic substances like blood, even if the surface has been cleaned and the traces are invisible to the human eye.
The luminol test doesn't reveal anything in the living room, but in the bedroom, it's a different story.
Once they sprayed the luminol and turned on the black light, it lit up on top of and right next to the bed. There were big smears that looked like someone had tried to clean up a lot of blood.
As a result of this luminol, what looks like a peaceful, serene apartment, under the proper light is a gruesome, bloody murder scene.
Of course, right then and there, they put 2 and 2 together and realized that it's a very strong likelihood that Sierra has something to do with this.
Before detectives can track Sierra down to make an arrest, Hurricane Harvey finally comes ashore on the Texas coast.
This was a very unique and different storm.
Rather than move inland, the storm essentially stalled out over the Houston area.
You had your typical storm surge, but a massive amount of rainfall. The rain kept on coming. This went on for over 5 days of straight rain. Picture torrential downpours for 5 straight days. So while all of Houston was underwater, Baytown, in particularly, was being swallowed up. Boats were being shipped inland, houses, water up to the rooftops.
Baytown police must now drop everything to focus on the crisis at hand, leaving Sierra Sutton on the run.
They're having to deal with the recovery process and organizing all that.
Hundreds of people were trapped by those floodwaters or turned up missing.
People were looking for their loved ones. In the midst of this storm,
But when the floodwaters recede, will it be too late to bring Sierra to justice?
I was praying that they would find her because she needed to pay for what she did.
While the Houston area is still tackling the cleanup weeks after Harvey had blown through, detectives assigned to Stephen Coleman's murder get an unexpected call in mid-September.
Homicide.
Hi. It's a woman from Louisiana. She tells detectives she knows Sierra Sutton.
She obviously had a lot of friends out there in Louisiana, friends she trusted.
But was Sierra's trust mistaken?
I know who killed Stephen Coleman.
Police in Baytown, Texas, have just received information that could close the case on Stephen Coleman's homicide.
suddenly there's a phone call from
Hi.
Sarah's friend named Brittany.
This is Brittany.
Brittany confirmed that Sierra was hiding out in New Orleans, staying with a mutual friend.
She went to her best friend. She was trying to get them to help her and to hide her.
And detectives are pretty confident they know what she's hiding from.
I know who killed Stephen Coleman.
Brittany couldn't deal with the secrecy, so she called police in Baytown.
Having already pegged Sierra as Stephen's killer, detectives ask Brittany to share more details.
I want you to know how much we appreciate you calling and talking to us.
I would have called sooner, but I didn't want to believe it at first.
What she hears out of Sierra's lips disgusted her, made her sick, could not believe that another human being could do this to somebody that she supposedly loved.
The beginning of Brittany's story fits with what detectives have already heard from Stephen's friends.
She said that he'd been acting like he wanted her to move out.
She believed he was seeing somebody else. So their relationship was rocky.
And according to Brittany, Sierra said the tension between her and Stephen came to a head the day he disappeared.
She had a temper. And she did not take it lightly if someone was cheating on her.
You don't do that to me.
Look, if you don't like it, maybe you should go back home.
And it got to the point to where he was like, all right, go back to New Orleans. She started to see that he was really serious. I know you know, and I'm telling you, that's what I'm doing.
But according to her friend Brittany, Sierra couldn't accept that.
The jealousy got to her so much where she just had enough. And so she decides that this is the only way out. Take him out.
I guess it came to a point like, if she can't have him, nobody can.
Next, Brittany says Sierra retrieved a gun from the closet and crept quietly back into the bedroom while Stephen was sleeping.
There was no argument, no fear for her own safety, nothing like that. Stephen was peacefully sleeping.
She shot him in the head.
Brittany said she was already shocked by the information Sierra told her. But what Sierra said next disgusted her to her core.
Sierra realizes she's too weak to carry the body.
So she reasons that there's only one way that she can get rid of the body, and that is to get a machete.
She told me she just chopped him up.
She chops off the head, cuts off the arms. She cuts off the legs.
Sierra told Brittany it took her all night to dismember Stephen.
When this went on, Sierra's own child is in the next room.
Early the next morning, she went to the store and bought supplies.
She bought duct tape, rope, and garbage bags to wrap up the body.
Thank you.
Then she quietly disposed of the evidence.
She decided to wrap each piece up, put it in the car, and drive around Baytown to different dumpsters.
They get picked up, they get brought to the landfill, and ultimately that is where the torso's found.
After cleaning up the apartment and disposing of the body, Sierra takes one final step.
How may we help you?
She did go to the police and report Stephen missing, which obviously was a tactic to try to throw people off for what she had done.
But now the detectives know everything.
Why Sierra would tell her friends this? Maybe it was something that did get on her conscience somewhat, but she just had to tell somebody.
She really thought that they was gonna help, but she really scared them.
Thank you.
Brittany's able to share other people who may possibly know about what took place. And so all these people were contacted, and all of them readily came forward.
Coupled with the evidence detectives already have, it's more than enough for an arrest warrant.
Then, with the help of local police, detectives took Sierra into custody at a relative's house in suburban New Orleans.
When detectives bring Sierra back to Texas and get her into an interrogation room, she refuses to admit that she's done anything wrong.
I told you already when I finished. No, you're not going to be honest with us and you're going to stay with that lame story. That's fine. That's up to you. You're still charged. And you don't have anything else to say to you guys.
Sierra at one point even claimed that it was strange men who came into the apartment and killed Stephen, and that they had threatened to hurt her too if she snitched.
2 people came into the house. They were disguised and they told me to go into the bathroom and shut the door. And I heard a gunshot. And they told me to leave and to make up something, basically to say that they weren't there. And basically, I did what I was told because I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. I was in fear for my life.
But no matter what Sierra says, the evidence against her is more than enough to charge her with Stephen's murder.
Not only did detectives have statements from Brittany, but they had the evidence of luminol all over the apartment.
Soon after Sierra's interrogation, DNA testing erases any hope that Stephen might still be alive.
The torso, without any doubt, belongs to Stephen.
However, the remainder of Stephen's body was never found.
We don't know what happened to the rest of Stephen. And as a family member or a friend of this guy, that's got to be a stake in the heart.
In February of 2019, after prosecutors have built an airtight case against her, Sierra pleads guilty to murder. But at her sentencing, she shows an appalling lack of remorse.
She did not care. She was like, yeah, I did it. And so what?
She's in the courtroom, no remorse. She's unfazed. What is wrong with this woman?
She got sentenced to 45 years.
The sentence is a bitter disappointment for Stephen's friends and family.
I felt like she could have got more time. She really should have got death.
That's how I felt at that time. But I've grown to understand the power of forgiveness. I have no place to want revenge.
So instead of vengeance, Stephen's friends focus on remembering the